Vanessa Guillen was a 20-year-old U.S. Army soldier whose story shocked the United States and sparked nationwide conversations about justice, harassment, and accountability within powerful institutions. Born in 1999 in Houston, Texas, Vanessa came from a close-knit Mexican-American family. She was described as kind, hardworking, and deeply committed to her goals. Joining the military was not just a career choice for her, it was a dream she worked hard to achieve. Vanessa enlisted in the U.S. Army with hopes of building a stable future and making her family proud. She was stationed at Fort Hood, one of the largest military bases in the United States. To many, Fort Hood symbolized discipline, order, and protection. For Vanessa, however, it slowly became a place of fear and silence. In the months leading up to her disappearance, Vanessa confided in her family about troubling experiences. She told them she was being harassed by a superior. Fearful of retaliation, she chose not to formally report the behavior. This decision would later become one of the most painful elements of her story, highlighting how power dynamics can silence victims. On April 22, 2020, Vanessa Guillen was last seen at work inside an armory room at Fort Hood. She was performing routine duties on what appeared to be an ordinary day. Later that evening, she failed to respond to calls and messages from her family. This was immediately alarming, as Vanessa was known to stay in regular contact with them. Her family reported her missing the very next day. At first, the response felt slow and confusing. The military assured her family that efforts were underway, but details were limited. Days turned into weeks, and still there were no answers. Vanessa's car was found on base, and some of her personal belongings were discovered nearby, yet there was no sign of her. As time passed, frustration and fear grew. Vanessa's family refused to remain silent. They began speaking publicly, demanding transparency and urgency. Social media quickly amplified their voices. The hashtag Justice for Vanessa Guillen spread across platforms, drawing national attention to the case. What began as a missing person investigation soon exposed deeper issues. Reports surfaced suggesting a pattern of violence and misconduct at Fort Hood. Vanessa's disappearance was no longer viewed as an isolated incident. Instead, it became a symbol of systemic failure, particularly regarding how complaints of harassment and abuse were handled. Public pressure intensified. Lawmakers, activists, and fellow soldiers called for accountability. Vigils were held across the country. Vanessa's face became a symbol of courage and injustice, representing countless women who felt unheard within institutions meant to protect them. 2 months after her disappearance, the truth began to emerge. In June 2020, human remains were discovered near a river in Texas. Authorities later confirmed they belonged to Vanessa Guillen. The news devastated her family and supporters, but it also marked a turning point. The investigation rapidly shifted toward identifying those responsible. Evidence led investigators to a fellow soldier. As details emerged, it became clear that Vanessa had been killed on base. The revelation confirmed what her family had feared all along, that she was not safe where she should have been most protected. The case sent shockwaves through the nation. Questions poured in. How could such a crime occur on a secure military base? Why were warning signs ignored? And how many others were suffering in silence? Vanessa Guillen's story was no longer just about one young woman. It became a catalyst for change. Her case forced the U.S. military and government officials to confront uncomfortable truths about harassment, reporting systems, and accountability. Vanessa was remembered not only as a victim, but as a brave young woman whose story ignited a movement. Her courage, both in life and through the voices of her family after her death, challenged powerful systems and demanded reform. This first part of Vanessa Guillen's story lays the foundation for understanding why her case became a turning point. It is a story of dreams, silence, courage, and a fight for justice that would soon lead to nationwide reform and lasting impact. Public pressure led to tangible consequences. Senior leaders at Fort Hood were removed or disciplined following the independent investigation. The Army acknowledged that changes were necessary. This acknowledgement, while overdue, marked an important shift. It was a rare moment when an institution publicly recognized its failures under intense scrutiny. Vanessa's family continued to push for lasting reform. They emphasized that justice should not end with punishment alone, but with prevention. Their advocacy played a key role in the introduction of new legislation aimed at protecting service members from harassment and ensuring safer reporting channels. This legislation, later known as the I Am Vanessa Guillen Act, sought to remove sexual harassment cases from the traditional chain of command, reducing the fear of retaliation. The act represented a significant step toward change. While it could never bring Vanessa back, it offered hope that future service members might be better protected. For many families, Vanessa's story became proof that speaking out even against powerful systems can lead to progress. Throughout this period, Vanessa Guillen's image remained a constant presence in protests, memorials, and online campaigns. She was remembered not only for how her life ended, but for the impact her story had on millions. Her name became associated with courage, truth, and the demand for accountability. Yet, despite reforms and acknowledgments, Vanessa's family continued to carry immense pain. Justice, in their eyes, was incomplete. The loss of a courtroom trial left unanswered questions, and the emotional toll remained heavy. Still, they chose to keep moving forward, honoring Vanessa by ensuring her story would not fade into silence. This stage of the story reflects a painful truth. Justice is often complicated, especially when institutions are involved. Accountability can take many forms: legal, social, and cultural. In Vanessa Guillen's case, justice began to emerge through reform, awareness, and the breaking of long-standing silence. Her story forced the nation to confront uncomfortable realities and to reconsider how power, fear, and loyalty can be misused. It marked a turning point that would influence policy, awareness, and conversations for years to come. In the years following the investigation, Vanessa Guillen's name did not fade into the background. Instead, it became a lasting symbol of resistance against silence and injustice. Her story continued to influence policy, public awareness, and the lives of countless people who saw themselves reflected in her experience. The passage of the I Am Vanessa Guillen Act marked one of the most important outcomes of the case. For the first time, sexual harassment within the U.S. military could be reported outside the traditional chain of command. This change was critical. Many service members had long feared retaliation if they reported abuse to superiors who might protect the institution rather than the individual. The law acknowledged that fear and attempted to dismantle it. Vanessa's family attended hearings, stood beside lawmakers, and spoke publicly about their pain. They did not present themselves as experts or politicians, but as grieving relatives demanding dignity and protection for others. Their persistence ensured that Vanessa's name would be remembered not just in tragedy, but in reform. Across the country, military bases introduced new training programs, reporting channels, and oversight measures. While no system can ever be perfect, the changes represented progress driven by a life that should never have been lost. Many service members later shared that they felt safer speaking up because of Vanessa's legacy. Outside the military, her story resonated deeply with women everywhere. It echoed familiar fears: being unheard, being unsafe in places meant to protect, and being pressured into silence. Vigils were held in cities across the United States. Murals were painted. Her face appeared on banners not as a victim alone, but as a reminder that truth demands space. Vanessa Guillen became more than a name, she became a movement. At Fort Hood, the base where her life ended, the environment began to change under scrutiny. Leadership restructuring, policy reviews, and increased transparency followed. While these actions could not undo the past, they acknowledged responsibility. Institutions that once deflected blame were now forced to confront their role in allowing harm to occur. For Vanessa's family, healing remained a complex journey. Justice, while partially achieved through reform, could never replace their daughter, sister, and friend. The absence at family gatherings, the unanswered questions, and the knowledge of what she endured remained deeply painful. Yet, they chose to honor her by continuing to speak, ensuring her story would protect others. Years later, Vanessa's name is still spoken in classrooms, courtrooms, and conversations about institutional accountability. Her story is studied as an example of how systems can fail and how public courage can force them to change. She is remembered as a young woman who loved her family, served her country, and deserved safety and respect. Importantly, her case reshaped how society views justice. It showed that justice is not always immediate, neat, or complete. Sometimes, it arrives through awareness, reform, and the prevention of future harm. Sometimes, justice is ensuring that one person's suffering leads to protection for many others. Vanessa Guillen's life reminds us that silence protects wrongdoing, but voices when united can move even the most powerful institutions. Her story urges vigilance, empathy, and the courage to speak when something feels wrong. Today, her image still circulates online, not as a headline but as a reminder. A reminder that safety should never be conditional. That reporting abuse should never require bravery. And that every individual, regardless of rank or gender, deserves dignity. Her legacy lives on in laws, in awareness, and in the voices of those who no longer feel alone. Vanessa Guillen did not choose to become a symbol, but through truth and resilience, she became one. And because her story was told, heard, and remembered, it continues to protect lives she will never meet.